Ever wondered why Python seems to be everywhere when people talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and figure that out. If you're curious about getting into AI, but the coding part feels a little intimidating, you are in exactly the right place.
Here's the game plan for today. We're going to start with the right mindset, because that's half the battle. Then, we'll dive into why Python is the king of the hill. After that, we'll look at the cool features that make it so friendly, get our hands dirty with some actual code, and then wrap up with where you can go from here. Sound good? Let's do it.
Okay, first things first. Before we type a single line of code, we need to talk about the most powerful tool you have in your arsenal. And no, it's not your keyboard, it's your mindset. This quote absolutely nails it. When you start coding, you are gonna see errors, a lot of them. But here's the secret. Errors aren't failures, they're clues. They're part of the process. Every single error message is a little lesson teaching you how to get better. If you can learn to embrace that, to see mistakes as progress, well, that's when the real learning begins.
So, now that we've got our game face on, let's tackle the million-dollar question. Why Python? Out of all the programming languages out there, what made this one the absolute engine behind the AI revolution we're seeing today?
You know, with all the buzz, it's easy to assume Python is some brand new, cutting-edge language built specifically for AI, right? Well, what if I told you that's not the case at all?
Okay, check this out. Python was actually created way back in 1991. That makes it older than Java. So why the sudden explosion in popularity in the 2010s? It's simple. That's when the AI and data science boom really kicked off. And all the scientists and researchers who were leading the charge, they needed a language that let them test ideas fast, and they overwhelmingly chose Python.
And why did they pick it? It really boils down to three simple things. First, the syntax is just clean. It reads almost like plain English, which was perfect for scientists who are experts in their fields, not necessarily in complex programming. Because it was so easy to read, it was also easy to learn, and that meant they could go from an idea to a working prototype incredibly fast. It was all about speed of experimentation.
So we've covered the why Python took over. Now let's pop the hood and look at the what. The actual specific features that make it so incredibly powerful, yet so welcoming for someone just starting out.
First up, Python is open source. What does that mean? It means there's a huge global community of developers building amazing tools, we call them libraries, that you can use for free. The analogy here is perfect. It's like using an instant noodle packet. You don't have to spend hours making the noodles from scratch or grinding your own spices. You just grab the packet, add water, and you've got a meal. In AI, this means you can use a super complex algorithm for, say, image recognition without having to write it all yourself. It's a massive head start.
Second, Python is an interpreted language. And trust me, for a beginner, this is a lifesaver. Instead of you writing a whole program, hitting run, and then getting a giant, scary list of 50 errors, Python checks your code one line at a time. The very instant it finds one mistake, it stops and says, hey, the problem is right here on this line. It makes finding and fixing bugs so much easier.
And finally, it's platform independent. You'll hear the phrase, write once, run anywhere, and that's exactly what it means. You can write a Python script on your Windows laptop, then send that exact same file to your friend who has a Mac, or run it on a Linux server in the cloud, and it'll just work. No changes needed. It's incredibly convenient.
All right, enough talk. We've gone through the theory, now it's time for the fun part. Let's actually get our hands dirty and walk through the absolute fundamentals of writing a piece of Python code that can interact with a user.
Before we can do anything with data, we need a place to store it. We use things called variables. Naming them is super easy. You just have to follow three golden rules. 1, it has to start with a letter or an underscore. 2, no spaces allowed. And 3, you can't name it something that Python already uses, like print or list. That's it.
So, about that no spaces rule. How do you make your variable names readable if you have multiple words? Well, we have two popular styles. There's camel case, where you start lowercase and capitalize the first letter of every new word. Or there's snake case, where you just connect everything with underscores. Either one works great. It's just a matter of preference.
Okay, let's make our program interactive. To get information from a user, we use the input function. It's super simple. But, and this is a big but, you have to remember one crucial detail. No matter what the user types in, even if it's the number 42, Python sees it as a string of text by default.
So what do you do if you actually need a number, for doing math? Well, you have to tell Python to convert it. By wrapping our input function inside int function, we're basically saying, hey, Python, I know this looks like text, but I want you to treat it as an integer.
This is called typecasting, and it's fundamental.
Now this one looks a little wild at first, but it's an incredibly powerful trick. What if you want the user to enter a bunch of numbers all on one line? This single line of code does it all. It takes the input, splits it up wherever there's a space, then maps that integer conversion to every single piece, and finally puts them all together in a list. It's a beautifully efficient one-liner.
Lastly, after we've done all our work, we need to show the results. The best, most modern way to do this is with something called an F string. See that little F before the quotation mark? That's a superpower. It lets you pop your variables right inside the text using these curly braces. It makes printing out dynamic messages incredibly clean and easy.
Wow, we have covered a ton of ground. We went from the high-level history of why Python is so popular all the way down to the nitty-gritty of writing your first few lines of code. Let's quickly recap and then talk about where this journey takes you next.
So let's lock in the main points. We now know that Python's simple, readable style made it the perfect tool for the AI revolution. We learned that awesome features like its open source libraries and its line-by-line error checking make it a fantastic language to learn. And best of all, you now know the 3 core building blocks of pretty much any program: how to handle variables, how to get input, and how to display output. You can officially write code that has a conversation with a user. You've taken that first, massive step. You've gone